My name is Miranda and welcome to another video. And once again, welcome to my house in my home city. I'm actually home for the holidays this year, which I'm still very excited about. So today, because I have access once again to my book collection, besides the few that are in Wales and the ones I have lent out, I thought I would talk about 5 books that I really adore that are not in my most read genre. As I'm sure you've heard me mention a couple times on this channel, my favorite genre is fantasy. That is the majority of what I read. I don't read outside that genre very often. The most common outside of that is usually ancient historical fiction set in anywhere that isn't Europe, classics, and then of course my guilty pleasure reads, zombie novels and romance novels. So today I want to share books in my least read genres that I still love. First and foremost, because I will admit this one is almost stretching it. I did mention I enjoy historical fiction, but I have a preference that it's either set in ancient times or that it's at least not set in Europe. I don't know why, I've never really been drawn to a lot of historical fiction that's been set in anywhere past, I'd say, mid-Renaissance Europe. I've tried reading a few, never really got into them, they just never really caught my attention, except for this book. I read Saras Key by Tatiana de Rosnay back when I was in high school. A French teacher of mine actually recommended it to us. I absolutely love this book. It's heartbreaking, it's devastating, but it's just a beautifully written book. This book takes place both in the past and in the present, and the past is set during World War II in Paris, France, during the Vel d'Hiv roundup. And the book follows a girl named Sarah, as you can tell by the title, but also in the present day follows a reporter who discovers her photo and learns she was a girl in the Vel d'Hiv roundup and decides to find out exactly what became of her. I remember crying quite a bit when I was reading this, but I love it so much that I'm okay with shedding a few tears to reread it. I haven't read anything else by Tatiana de Rosnay. Majority of her other stuff seems to be contemporary adult, and I've never been too fond of that genre, so I haven't really tried any of her other works. But I absolutely adore Saras Key, and I would recommend it to anyone who likes historical fiction, particularly any that's set during World War II. Next up is a book in, I guess, YA contemporary. Again, not a genre I'm particularly fond of. It's not that I don't read YA contemporary, it's just never been something that's that interesting to me. I have read one Sarah Dessen book. I have never read any others. I've read Speak, which is one of my all-time favorites. I've read Stolen, which is again an all-time favorite. Perks of Being a Wallflower is also a favorite of mine. But this book in particular, I'm almost surprised how much I still like this book. And that is I Am the Messenger by Markus Zusak. So you may recognize the author. He is the author of The Book Thief. I'll be honest, I don't know if this came out before The Book Thief or not. All I know is this is the first and so far only Markus Zusak book I have read. Yes, I still have not gotten to The Book Thief. But I read this book, I believe, also back in high school, and I absolutely love it. This book follows a young man by the name of Ed Kennedy who lives a rather unextraordinary life as a cab driver. He's in love with his best friend and is just devoted to his dog. One day, however, he accidentally stops a robbery. And after that, these cards begin to show up at his door. These cards now make Ed the messenger, and he has to complete whatever is written on these cards. I like this book. It has been many years since I've read it, so I don't know if my thoughts on it would change, but I do remember really enjoying this book when I did read it. And I do still have a lot of positive feelings towards it, so I probably would enjoy reading it again. The next 2 are books that are both in the same genre, and that is sci-fi, particularly YA sci-fi. Now, I've had a problem reading sci-fi for a long time now. I still haven't read the Han Solo books. I promised my dad I would read a few too many years ago. It's hard for me to get into sci-fi. I don't know why, it just is. But these 2 books, I absolutely adore them, and they're some of the few sci-fi books I can actually claim to have read. The first one is Tin Star by, Cecilia Castellucci. I know this isn't a standalone. I have read the second book, but I definitely prefer the first book a lot more. This book follows a young girl who has left Earth with her mother and her sister to start a new life on another planet. However, during a routine stopover at a station to restock, refuel, get their wits about them, she discovers something sinister may be happening. She's then beaten and left for dead by the leader of their group and then has to learn to survive on this station where she's the only human. I had a friend recommend this book to me, and one of the reasons she thought I would like it was because the author apparently drew some inspiration from Babylon 5, which is one of my all-time favorite sci-fi TV series. And I can definitely see where she got some of the inspiration, and as I read this, I just kept thinking about all the sci-fi series I do love. I have a much easier time watching sci-fi than I do reading it. But I can say this is one of the few sci-fi books I have read, and I absolutely love this book. In particular, I just love the concept of there being this one human girl on a station full of aliens. The next book is also a YA sci-fi. It does, however, sort of fall into the fairy tale genre, which I do read a lot of, but because this one is still very much a sci-fi book, I included it in this list. And that is Stitching Snow by R.C. Lewis. So a friend of mine and myself were at a bookstore one day. We found this, read the back, and decided, well, we really enjoy fairy tales. We need some new ones. Why not give a sci-fi version a try? I'm pretty sure she's read the Lunar Chronicles. I haven't. But I have read this, and I have to say this is one of the best fairy tale retellings for Snow White I have read. So this book follows a young woman by the name of Essie. Essie lives on a cold planet with her 7 little helper droids, and she essentially keeps quiet to herself. Until one day, a pilot crash lands. She decides to help him and then finds out he might be there not by accident. And he might be pulling her into a war she has tried desperately to keep herself out of. I love this variation of Snow White. I love the fact that Snow White was a lot more of a fighter in this, but it wasn't an overly dark and gritty retelling. And instead of it being a fantastical universe, it is sci-fi. It has science and technology in this. And again, that just made it different, and it made me enjoy it so much more. Alright, so the last book I want to talk about, I don't have my copy. I lent it to a friend. I've been telling her for years to read it. I lent it to her before I left town again back in the summer, and she's, I think, finally reading it now, so I'm not willing to borrow it back for this video because I really want her to read this book. And this book is in a genre that, I will be honest, my most hated book of all time comes from this genre. So I usually don't read it because my most hated book is from this genre. The genre is magical realism, and the book is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. Now, I actually picked up this book at an airport. I had finished all the other books I brought with me on vacation, and as I was about to get on the plane to head home, I picked up a book at the airport to read on the flight. And I will tell you, I had a hard time putting this one down. I absolutely love The Night Circus. I thought it was a fantastic book. I will admit to a couple times as I read it, I had to reread bits and pieces because the language was so beautiful and flowy and poetic that I would get to the end of something, stop and go, well, that was beautiful. Not sure what I just read. The Night Circus follows 2 different characters, and these characters are part of a circus. The circus, however, they have essentially created as a battleground to showcase their powers. I don't want to say much more about this book because, I'll be honest, I probably won't give the description much justice. And it has been quite a few years since I read it that my memories of it and essentially what it's about are slowly getting vague. But despite how many years it's been since I read it, it remains a book that I absolutely adored. Which is almost odd for me because, as I said, I'm usually not very interested in magical realism. I know I once said that the genre I don't like the most is contemporary. In reality, it might actually be magical realism. Like I said, my most hated book of all time is from this genre. I'm still very, very iffy on it. But now, after reading Weight of Feathers, I'm willing to give the genre a little bit more of a try. I just hope I keep finding more that make me think of The Night Circus. So there you have it. Those are 5 books that I absolutely adore from my least read genres. There aren't too many genres I absolutely won't read. There are, however, few that I definitely don't enjoy reading nearly as often. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos by me, both bookish and travel related, please be sure to click that subscribe button down below. And I'll see you next time. Bye!